everyone, King of Charmanders here, and today I'm going to feature a Rouge build where you will never die. Well, there still are 2 or 3 ways you can actually still die, but they're rare. I'll explain them later in the video. Alright, so you're gonna want equipment with these affixes. Defensive, you're gonna want life on kill, maximum life, life regeneration while not damaged recently, elemental resistance as high as possible, increased armor and stats, and increased potion capacity, and this is optional. For offense, you're going to want increased critical strike chance, increased critical strike damage, and increased vulnerable damage. As for aspects, you're going to want these aspects on this build. So the main one you're going to want is going to be anything that has this, where Flurry damages enemies in a circle around you and deals a percentage of increased damage. We're going to be using Flurry, which is the main ability for this build, and this is going to allow you to deal your imbuements around you and deal increased damage in a circle. So this is going to be it's going to be crazy, and this is basically going to make you a porcupine. You're going to be like Sonic the Hedgehog, where you're going to blast through your enemies and just absolutely annihilate Dr. Robotnik's plans. If you don't know what Sonic is, you should probably watch the movie. It's actually pretty good. Next, defensively, you're going to want the bubble. The bubble, if you've an act, I forgot which act it is, but since you got that legendary item, you probably used it when you started playing Diablo. The bubble is very powerful. When you have the bubble, when you're not healthy, a magical bubble is summoned around you for a set amount of seconds. And while you're standing in the bubble, you and all of your party members or any other player is immune. Yes, it can only occur once every 90 seconds, but this can really save you in the long run. And you're going to want an aspect of where you're going to be able to heal. This one where you heal for X amount of life per second for each close enemy, up to a percentage of up to an amount of life per second. So this one by combining this with your equipment affixes, I was trying to find the word. By having this with the affixes you have, you're going to be able to heal close. You're going to be able to deal life damage on kill. You're going to increase your maximum life, increase your resistances, and increase your armor. So this is going to allow you to just have a bunch of life stacked up. And this is really important, especially if you know how playing Rouge is, because Rouges are generally really squishy. It's really hard. They're there to dive and dodge. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you could dodge a bunch of enemy attacks, you can dodge with a Rouge. That's the idea around it. The rest of it is optional. You can have anything else. I have increased armor percentage for 4 seconds. That's one of the aspects I have. You want to have Childer. I have Childer Frozen just to give me an extra barrier because we're going to be using cold imbuement for this build. And the rest I have are just optional ones. For example, the Grasp of Shadow, which vulnerable damage. I have this one, abilities, attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the core skill cast by X amount of percent. And just other ones. So the rest of you have is optional. Just follow the build, have as many defensive ones, and any other aspects that really play to your style when it comes to imbuements. This is version 1, like I mentioned, so I'll be experimenting more with this build, but I've liked this enough so far to where this does really well for me, and then I'm going to be able to play around it and hopefully make it better in the future. Next up, we have stats. So I'm going to go first with defense because this is primarily a defense build. You're going to, don't get me wrong, you're still going to do a lot of damage you're going to still do a lot of damage, but defense is the name of the game when it comes to this build. And lifesteal. You want to maximize your life as high as possible. You want to increase your life again, you want to have life on kill and you want to have life regen. These 3 factors are really important. Potion capacity is not so important. I just have it up to 12, but with this build, you are hardly going to use your potions. You're going to only use your potions when there's an emergency, or if you feel like you're going to get hit for way more, or you get crowd controlled. That's why you want potion capacity. But in max, I've never used, since I've used this build, I've never had to use more than 5 potions, or just 4 or 5 potions, and that's when I'm in danger. You're going to want to increase your resistances as high as possible as well. So when I feature this build in the dungeon to show you just how great it is, I'm going to show you a poison one because if you notice, my poison one is super low. It's only 16%. But generally, you want to increase your resistances to everything as much as possible. So close resistance and just your elemental resistance as high as humanly possible. For your offense, you want vulnerable damage. So this is why I have a Grasp of Shadow. You don't need the Grasp of Shadow. You don't need Grasp of Shadow. You don't need this vulnerable aspect. You just need items that will give you vulnerable damage and critical strike chance. As with any build, you want your crit strike chance to be as high as possible. The base one, even if you have additional ones via affixes, abilities, etc., you still want your base critical strike chance to be as high as possible. Your crit strike damage, you want that high as well. It could be higher on mine, but the reason why I don't mind it being that high is because you gain life from doing damage around you, and with Flurry, you're going to gain life from everything you hit. So there's no real point of having your damage to be super high, because you're still going to go through enemies pretty quickly with this build, but you just want your strike chance and critical strike damage as high as possible. So for your specializations, you're going to want combo points. We're going to use Puncture to generate combo points and take advantage of its ability to make your enemies vulnerable with the skill tree we're about to show you right now with your abilities. So for your skill tree, what you're going to use for this build is we're going to use Puncture. Puncture, the reason why we're using it is because of the modifiers. You're going to gain 2 energy when you puncture damages a crowd control enemy, so you're going to get more energy when you're able to, when you have them dazed, and you're going to repeat the combo with the Flurry. And it now deals points in a spread, and if you hit at least 2 enemies with your blades, it makes them vulnerable 2 seconds. So we're going to combine this with a Flurry ability that I'm going to tell you about shortly. So the path is Puncture, then you're going to go Enhanced Puncture, followed by Fundamental Puncture. Next, we're going to go on to your core skill, which is going to be Flurry. Now with Flurry, here's what we're going to do with Flurry. Now, you know it unleashes a stab, and normally it only does it in front of you. But with the aspect, like I mentioned earlier, it does it in a circle and deals increased damage. So with the modifiers, is if you do it on a crowd control or vulnerable damage, if you damage a vulnerable or crowd control energy, you're healed for 1% of your maximum HP, and then up to 12% maximum HP per cast. So if vulnerable hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to Puncture, and if you make them vulnerable, and if you hit with Flurry, it's going to make them vulnerable. And I mean all enemies. So that means since you're the porcupine, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to make all the enemies around you vulnerable. So it's going to be a great stack. But if you're confused, just follow the combo you're going to see later, and that's how it works. Then you're going to go to Enhanced Flurry. This is what's going to make sure you are healed. And then it's going to make all vulnerable enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So you're going to have this one. This is really important to make sure you go to Enhanced Flurry because this is going to add on to that life sustain I'm going to talk about, or that life steal. So you're going to deal with this. And in addition to this tree, this is an important one, and this one as well. You want to put 1 point in the Sturdy, and you're going to also want Siphoning Strikes. So you're going to heal for 3% of your maximum damage when you critically strike close enemies. So these two are really important. Make sure you have Enhanced Flurry, and make sure you have Siphoning Strikes. So when you critically strike, you're going to heal for 146, and you're going to heal up to 583 per cast. So you're going to just get such a ton of HP just by being able to critically strike and hit enemies. So again, most important part are these are the most part of these two. These two make up the big combo, and that's why I'm going to build upon this build because there's so many other things you can do with it. For now, here's what I'm going to use for the rest of your abilities, for your skill tree. On to agility, we're going to use dash. Now for dash is just to make sure you move faster. The reason why you play Rouge is probably because you move fast and you like the speed and ability and combination, and just the mobility is just absolutely amazing. So what you're going to do is use dash, you're going to use it to dodge, or you're going to move it to travel longer distances. For its modifiers, you're going to go ahead and make sure you have the one that dash takes in critical strike damage. It's the only one, you don't have really a choice. And then you're going to do discipline dash. So you're going to be able to slow enemies, and if they're slowed, you're going to daze them for 2 seconds instead. This is really just extra crowd control. Again, you're mainly going to be using dash to get away from enemies, go through enemies so you make sure you don't get dogpiled, or you're going to get out of dangerous situations. Next, we're going to use, for our subterfuge, we're going to use Poison Trap. The reason why Poison Trap is because we're going to use imbuements in this build. So we're going to be using 2 imbuements, and you definitely want the modifiers. So the 30% reset for imbuement skill cooldowns, absolutely amazing. You're going to reset your imbuements, and then it knocks down enemies. So with that, you're going to be able to give another crowd control for your stacking damage. So we got plenty of crowd control damage here, and with your imbuements, you're going to do more damage over time with your imbuement skills as well. And that's where Poison Imbuement comes in. We're going to make sure we have Lucky Hit, where Poison Imbuement has a 30% chance of doubling over time. This is just, it makes to help you kill your enemies faster with poison damage. And you're going to be able to use Poison Durament, which is the duration, and Enhanced Poison Imbuement for duration. Then Mixed Poison Imbuement, so it has up to 30% chance to apply double amount of poison over time. So this allows you to just put poison your enemies and make sure that you are able to just deal an additional amount of damage. Cold Imbuement, you're able to chill and freeze your opponents. This is really helpful because with the chill and frozen, you can freeze elites and you can freeze enemies around you. So you could just steal life off them so they don't hit you anyways. But this one won't really, it doesn't matter too much. But again, it's just nice because you get that extra crowd control with chill and frozen. So you're going to get your modifiers, Cold Imbuement, and Critical Strikes have a 20% to instantly freeze. So again, just another additional CC. We're going to crowd control our opponents like crazy and cause a whole bunch of damage. And the reason why we're doing this is because with the Flurry and the Puncture combination, you don't really need to worry about damage reduction too much. You can do it even more, but I'm going to explain how you avoid dying or how you're practically unkillable. So I'll do that later. This build does not use any ultimate skill. You're not going to need to, but this is also important. You're going to want Trap Mastery. So the reason why we use Poison Trap is because you gain 12% critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd control enemies for 4 seconds. So all that crowd control I told you about, and we got vulnerable, well, guess what? You're going to have such a huge chance to critically strike your opponent. This is where all that comes together. So because you're doing such high crit strike damage, you're going to be able to lifesteal like mad against any enemies around you. So make sure you have 3 points onto Trap Mastery. And then we're going to have Victimize. Again, this build is very highly customizable, but I'm going to use Victimize. So dealing direct damage to a vulnerable area has a 30% chance to cause an explosion. So we're just going to be able to not only do AoE around us, but also area of effect damage to just any of them, causing explosions to making sure they die faster. So this is just an additional one. Again, I'll be able to customize in the future, but this is the skill tree. As for your Paragon, it doesn't really matter much what you build. As you see here, I have 28 available points, and I haven't even like maximized it yet. So just run the Paragon that you think that's going to be the best for you. But generally, you could try to follow this path right here. I went to get to both. As you see, I went to Skillful. I got all the notes from the beginning ones, as much dexterity as possible. And then I went into Intelligence with this Glyph socket, just so that I can increase my critical my critical strike chance, and my critical strike damage. But again, you're a Paragon. I have plenty of points. I haven't optimized it fully. This build will improve, but for the most part, your Paragon doesn't matter too much as far as this build goes. Your key goal is sustainability, and this will get you so much sustainability just based off the skills, etc., that, again, it won't really matter much. Just attribute your points as much as you can, and to the playstyle that fits you the most. Alright, so here's the combo. These are the steps. Step 1, you're going to puncture and build your combo points to 3, followed by getting your imbuements, poison or cold, doesn't matter which one you do first, as long as you got both of them. Then you're going to Flurry. Once you do that, you're going to drop a Poison Trap after if you have time, or you could do it at step 1. So you could do this before step 1, or you could do it at step 5. Doesn't really matter. It's up to you, just when the cooldown's out there. And then you're going to repeat steps 1 and 4. So if you don't have your imbuements on cooldown, what you're going to do is you're going to keep building your combo points and flurrying until Poison Imbuement and Cold Imbuement are back up after cooldown. And then you're going to do steps 1 through 5 over again. So pretty simple. You're going to see the example over here. Again, it's just build your puncture to 3, do your imbuements, flurry, and then you're going to drop your Poison Trap if you have it on cooldown or if it's ready. And then you're just going to repeat over and over again. Build your combo points, flurry, or you're going to do the whole combo over again. And dash is for faster movements and escapes. Now, how are you unkillable? You gain life from kills, being close to enemies, not being damaged recently, critically striking, And this is mainly coming from your vulnerable damage crit, but anything anything gives you life anyways. You have an immunity bubble, and you have high elemental resistance. Now you're going to see an example of just how crazy this build is, but you can still die, and I'm going to show you examples. The big one is not being able to hit enemies. If you're low on HP and you can't hit enemies, it's going to be tough, but that's what you have potions for. So, and also getting crowd control. This is how everyone dies. You get crowd control by a bunch of elites, and then you just get dogpiled. You get flying elbowed, you get moonsaulted, you get swanton bombed like Jeff Hardy. If you're a wrestling fan, you're going to know that reference. But yes, if you get dogpiled by a bunch of elites, just crowd controlling you to death, that's how you can still die. I'm going to show you an example. And getting nuked by bosses. This is the big one. Now, as a rogue, you definitely use your movement to your advantage, and you want to dodge anything and everything on your path. Or anything that's going to be big, so that you can avoid crowd control and everything. You can still get nuked. And I'm going to show you in this video, you can still get nuked. Rogues are generally squishy. They don't take a lot of damage in general, but you can still tank some of these hits when you're at full HP. But, as I mentioned as the big point right here, all of these are generally avoidable by using health potions and positioning correctly in battle. So all of these are plentifully avoidable. Just don't get complacent, and you practically are unkillable. Alright, so here's a showcase of the build. I'm giving you, the first example is going to be from Avarice, the boss. As you see here, I'm literally just sitting underneath them and tanking everything. Well, not tanking everything, but look at how much life sustain I get just by attacking him. And even though he's damaging me, just look at the amount of HP. Not once will I ever use a potion during the showcase that I'm showing you right now. So I'm going to show you two things. One, I'm going to show you that you have to reposition yourselves. You can still possibly die from getting nuked by a world boss. But I can literally sit under here and look at just how much HP I'm recovering by attacking with my Flurry combination. I'm never in any real danger of losing, and we're able to take out Avarice with me literally not die. Well, I'm going to die once, but it's just to give you guys an example of just how you need to dodge nuke attacks. So even as good as this build is, and you're basically unkillable, you can still get nuked. So here you go. And then the Swanton Bomb comes out of nowhere, Jeff Hardy comes and returns to WWE, and then you just get absolutely slaughtered. So yeah, you have to make sure if a world boss has a nuke move or a capstone boss, etc., you still need to make sure you dodge it. But despite that, even if you're in a danger zone, and even though you see I'm not using any potions, I can still come out with the dub. Next is me carrying this free soul for content. So this guy was asking for help for a capstone, so I was like, why not? I'll help him out. And this is to show you just how sustainable this build is. I'm going to literally just chop down Elias. I'm not going to move from him. There's my health bubble. But you're going to watch me just absolutely shred Elias. This is within a minute. And Rouges aren't supposed to be this tanky or sustainable by killing world bosses. But just how, look, I'm not repositioning or doing anything. I'm just sitting in front of him. And then as soon as he goes into stagger, we're just going to absolutely wipe Elias. That's how crazy this build is. I can literally just sit, carry people to tier 4 capstones, and just attack. And that's how crazy this build is. And mind you, this is not even like super customizable. This isn't the best version of the build I'm going to show you. Now here's the example where you're going to die by crowd control. So as good as the sustainable is, watch how you're going to die just because you get stunned so many times. But despite that fact, look how long I lived. I lived a good 30 seconds or 20 seconds-ish running into a bunch of elites. So you're still going to need to reposition yourself correctly and make smart decisions so that you still don't die. But as you see here, watch how I'm not going to use any potions. I'm just going to reposition, and even though I get stunned by some crowd control effects, I'm still able to just absolutely wipe out this entire army of elites and their mobs, even though I'm not using any of my potions. So I'm not using any of my potions, I'm just repositioning, making sure I chase down, get my imbuements, making sure I'm getting my 3 combo moves and getting my flurries off, and as you see, I'm just wiping and shredding down all these elites. It's even crazier, this build is so good. You're practically unkillable, you're sustainable, as long as you're playing like you're playing as a Rouge, you will not die. It's just so good. And I'm really looking forward to how I can improve on this build. Anyways, if you love this video, please do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe. And I will see y'all on the next video.